Picture yourself moving through a long, unfamiliar hallway inside a house you've never seen before. It seems endless. Along the walls hang antique mirrors, their surfaces aged and dim. You pause in front of one, yet there is no reflection, no face, only silhouettes drifting slowly as if they are alive, as if they breathe. At the far end of the corridor, a door stands slightly ajar. From it pours a soft glow, fluid and gentle, like light that can be touched. You reach it. You open it. You step inside. Someone is there, waiting. Not a stranger, not an intruder. It is the part of you you've been avoiding for years, the aspect you learned to suppress, the side you hide behind politeness, productivity, and control, the shadow. What would happen if, just for today, you didn't turn away? What if you allowed yourself to truly meet its eyes? If you've ever questioned why you keep repeating the same patterns, why you undermine yourself when things finally begin to improve, why certain people provoke reactions in you that feel disproportionate and uncontrollable, then stay. Take another step forward, because at the end of this passage, you'll be introduced to a simple yet profoundly transformative Jungian practice, one that allows you to face what lives behind your masks. A practice that opens the door to an inner calm that does not rely on circumstances, approval, or control over others. We are often taught that peace comes from fixing the outer world, resolving conflicts, managing every responsibility, staying available, responding quickly, agreeing even when the body quietly whispers no. But lived experience tells a different story. As Carl Jung observed, what unsettles us is rarely the external event itself, but what it stirs within us. Every irritation, every emotional trigger, every intense reaction toward another person can become an invitation inward, a mirror pointing us back to something unresolved inside. And it is here, in this realization, that the first fracture appears in the walls we've built to protect ourselves. The shadow is not out there in other people. The shadow lives within us. Only when we stop reacting automatically do we begin to see it. There is an uncomfortable truth hidden here. The world learns how to control us through our reactions. How many times did it take just a look, a comment, a tone of voice for you to lose your center? How often did the habit of pleasing others leave you hollow inside, as if your energy were leaking through invisible cracks? Jung would not have called this weakness, but misdirected energy. You sensed it the first time you chose silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence that transforms you into a presence capable of reorganizing a room without uttering a single word. A presence that unsettles those who were accustomed to feeding on your immediate reactions. That is where the threshold begins. When you become less controllable, you inevitably encounter your shadow, and the world which relied on your predictability feels disoriented. I promised you a revelation at the end, and it will come a clear, grounded practice to open that inner door with both courage and care. But first, walk with me a little longer. There was a man, let us call him Matthew, who had the same dream night after night. He dreamed of a small room lit by a single lamp that swayed like the pendulum of a clock. In one corner, a creature crouched in the shadows. He could never see its face, yet he could feel its breath. Every time he tried to approach it, something inside him forced him to wake up abruptly, his heart pounding in his throat. In waking life, Matthew was impeccable. He replied instantly, chose every word with care, avoided conflict as if his survival depended on it. But when he was alone, he felt drained, irritable, restless. Perhaps this sounds familiar. That recurring dream was not a random nocturnal fantasy. It was a half-open door to his shadow, everything he had repressed, denied, judged unacceptable within himself, and sent into exile. Jung described the shadow as a collection of psychic contents we reject because they contradict the ideal image we want to maintain before the world, the persona, the social mask that secures our acceptance. The cost of that mask is high. The more we polish it, the more fragments of ourselves are pushed into the basement. They do not disappear. They reorganize themselves in silence. One day, after a minor argument that left him inexplicably devastated, Matthew chose to do something different. Instead of reaching for his phone to justify himself, instead of composing a defensive essay in text messages, he stayed silent. Not as a punishment for the other person, but as an acknowledgement of his own limits. He closed the door to his room, sat on the floor, and for the first time asked a question without demanding an immediate answer. What have I been avoiding in myself for so long? At first, the silence was deafening. Then, faint but undeniable, an image appeared. Himself as a child, hands trembling after being told that anger made him bad. In that moment, he understood that for years, every spark of anger had been extinguished at the root, not out of wisdom, but out of fear of rejection. That anger expelled from consciousness had settled into the shadow, and from there it had been pulling the strings of his life. If the shadow had a voice, it might say, "I am not your enemy. I am your unrecognized energy. I am your strength." Given the wrong name, the shadow is not only aggression, envy, or shame. It also contains your assertive power, your capacity to say no, your gift for setting boundaries, your raw, unfiltered creativity. Repressing it may prevent you from hurting others, yes, but it also prevents you from defending what you love. You become safe for the world at the cost of becoming dangerous to yourself. When Jung spoke of individuation, he was referring to this very process. The recovery of lost pieces, the journey toward becoming whole. There is no individuation without the shadow. I will not deceive you. It is not a comfortable process, but it is the only one that truly liberates. You may be wondering where to begin, how to face the creature from the dream whose face you never see. The first step is to recognize the game of projections. We project when we attribute to others what we cannot tolerate in ourselves. That is why certain people activate your shadow with frightening ease. The friend who exhausts you with their constant need for attention. The colleague who seems unbearably arrogant. The dramatic family member who always escalates everything. Before judging, ask yourself what form of that energy you have denied within yourself. This does not mean you must tolerate the intolerable. It means making an inner turn using disturbance as a mirror rather than a verdict. That is why Jung said that what you resist persists, while what you bring into the light begins to transform. And here, silence becomes essential again. Not the silence that accumulates resentment, but the silence that gives you space to contemplate your role in the dance. That sovereign silence reorganizes your energy. It removes you from the theater of reactions and seats you in the inner courtyard from which you can see the entire stage. You already know this. Noise drags you outward. Silence centers you. And when you are centere, projections become visible like cracks that guide you towards something deeper. Let me share another image. There was a woman, let us call her Anna, who said yes to everything, to everyone at all hours. She carried responsibilities that were not hers. She listened to other people's problems deep into the night. She accepted meetings at impossible times. Her stated reason was that she wanted to be a good person. Beneath that, she feared that if she said no, she would stop being loved. The price was steep, an exhaustion so profound that she became invisible even to herself. One night she dreamed she was in a market where everyone was tearing pieces from her dress. She smiled as it happened, but the fabric unraveled until almost nothing was left. She woke up in tears through the lens of Jungian psychology. The dream was a transparent symbol. Her vital energy was being taken not by others, but by her own inability to set limits. Anna decided to try something both radical and simple: conscious unavailability. For 1 week, she did not respond to messages outside her chosen hours. She postponed conversations she would have accepted out of habit. She said no without attaching an explanatory thesis. The chaos was immediate. Reproaches followed. Guilt was projected onto her. What is wrong with you? You have changed. And of course, she had changed. By withdrawing from reactivity, she broke the script others relied on. Her silence was not indifference. It was respect for her psychic energy. That respect is the threshold of peace. By now you can sense that the shadow does not appear only as the monster you fear, but also as the excess docility that drains you. The shadow lives as much in your denied anger as in your denied love, as much in your creative impulse as in your fear of being seen. To meet it is not to become darker, but to become whole. When you repress it, it turns into symptoms. Anxiety, compulsive perfectionism, relationships where guilt writes the script, that constant feeling of living to uphold someone else's image. When you recognize it, something shifts. Its energy begins to return to consciousness. And with that recovered energy, You discover that there are battles you no longer need to fight, struggles that were never truly yours. This marks the beginning of a different inner stance. You become more selective. You stop being available to everything and everyone. This is a crucial turning point. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of discernment. Discernment is born when you can listen to your impulses without being devoured by them, and when you can observe your emotions without obeying them blindly. It is the quiet authority of someone who has learned to pause inside themselves. I want to invite you into an exercise of imagination. Picture yourself inside a theater. The lights are focused on the stage. What is being performed there is your everyday life. Notifications lighting up your phone, expectations placed on your shoulders, small dramas, urgent matters that are not truly yours, but somehow demand your attention. Then suddenly, a new light turns on at the back of the theater, illuminating a figure that has been there the entire time. Out of focus stands your shadow. It does not roar, it does not attack, it simply looks at you. What would it say if it could speak? Perhaps something like this: I have protected you. I took the fear you could not name and I carried it for you. I took your anger and turned it into tension in your shoulders. I hid your sadness behind your smile. But I can no longer hold all of this alone. Either you integrate me, it would say, or I will continue to speak through symptoms. That is the shadow's offer, integration or repetition. If you choose integration, there will be moments of discomfort. Yes, you will feel guilt when you say no. You will hear inner voices accusing you of being selfish. You will notice how some people drift away because you no longer play the role that benefited them. That loss can sting because it reveals how conditional some bonds truly were. But on the other side of that discomfort lies something non-negotiable: your peace. A peace that is born when your psychic energy begins to circulate in your favor, when your actions reflect your center instead of your fear. Another essential phase of the Jungian journey is the encounter with Thema and the animus, those inner figures that complement our psyche and color the way we relate to oath. ERs. When the shadow is not integrated, these figures become inflated and are projected outward. That is why we sometimes idealize someone with such intensity, as if they embodied everything we believe we lack, or demonize them with equal fervor, as if they carried all that we refuse to see in ourselves. The integration of the shadow deflates this habit of depositing our light and our darkness onto others. Then something quietly miraculous happens. We begin to relate to real people, not me-ages. And what a relief that is, to look without asking for salvation, to love without asking for redemption, to walk without needing internal permission. If you have come this far, you may already sense how silence has become an ally. That silence that pulled you out of pointless arguments, that made you breathe before responding, that taught you to observe. This is not emotional distance, it is real presence. And like all true presence, it can feel uncomfortable to those who were sustained by your constant availability. They may accuse you of having changed, and they are right. You changed your position in your own life. You moved from being a secondary character to becoming the director of the script. In this change, the shadow does not disappear. It sits at your table. It speaks to you. It tells you when you are repeating old patterns. It warns you that the charm of a certain bond may actually be the need to feel needed. It points out that what you call laziness may not be a lack of disciple, but a fear of failing. It reveals that your rage toward controlling people may be your own unacknowledged desire for control. The shadow becomes your compass, not your enemy. All it ever asked was to be heard. I returned to Matteo. After his decision to keep silent, the dream with the creature in the corner changed. The following night, the lamp was still swaying, but no longer violently. He took one step forward, then another. Instead of waking up, he stayed. He felt fear, yes, but he did not run. The creature lifted its head. It was not a monster. It was himself, younger, with an immense fury burning in his eyes. "I only wanted to protect you," it said. Matteo cried in the dream, and when he woke up, he knew something that no one could argue away. His anger was not his enemy. It was a poorly trained guardian. He spent weeks learning how to express it without hurting, how to listen to it before it exploded, how to say no when his body asked for it. With every honest no, with every chosen silence, with every boundary placed, the creature lost its claws. Peace began to feel not like a future promise, but like a possible state. Not because conflicts vanished, but because they no longer tore him away from his center. Perhaps you are wondering whether all of this will make you too hard, too selfish, too distant. I understand that fear. Many of us were taught to associate love with constant sacrifice, to believe that kindness is proven by giving in, to confuse limits with reject. Ion. But look honestly at what happens within you when you say yes to avoid a problem. Notice what happens in your body when your throat says no and your lips say yes. That awareness is the cost of false peace, and it is expensive. True peace does not charge you with guilt. It gives you energy back. It gives you time. It improves your sleep. It allows you to be present where you actually want to be. And paradoxically, it makes you more loving, because your acts of love are no longer attempts to manipulate the image others have of you, but free expressions of who you are. Here, I want to offer you a small mirror. Observe your day and mark 3 moments in which you reacted out of inertia. That message you answered, nervously. That extra explanation no one asked for. That laugh you used to soften an atmosphere that was not yours to fix. Then ask yourself, what did I fear in that moment? Rejection, chaos, losing control. Those fears point directly to the shadow. You do not need to conquer them today. It is enough to recognize them and stay. Breathe. The impulse to cover them up may feel like pulling your hands away from fire. But it is not fire. It is life asking for space. I know I promised a final revelation, a concrete practice. Before giving it to you, allow me to remind you of something Jung repeated in many forms. We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The shadow does not evaporate through decrees or positive affirmat. Ions that try to paint smiles along its edges. It integrates through practical courage, through small acts that realign everyday life. That is why what I am about to propose to you is not another theory, but a simple ritual of 3 movements that, if you adopt it, changes the script from the inside. The ritual works like this. First, you learn to observe without intervening. You create a call, a pause. Right at the moment, you feel the pull to respond automatically. That reflex to reply, to justify yourself, to explain, to defend, to please. Interrupt it. It can be something very simple, almost invisible to anyone else. Close your eyes for 5 seconds before sending that message you already have half-drafted in your mind. Breathe, and then ask yourself very honestly, what am I feeling right now? Not what should I feel, not what is logical to feel, but what is actually happening inside me in this moment. Then, ask, where do I feel it in my body? Bring your attention there and name it. I feel fear in my stomach. I feel anger tightening my chest. I feel sadness pressing behind my eyes. When you name it, something subtle but powerful happens. The emotion moves from the basement of your psyche into the light of consciousness. It stops driving you from below and becomes something you can look at, something you can relate to instead of something that secretly controls your behavior. Second, you enter into dialogue with the figure. Yes, literally set aside 5 minutes and write as if that emotion were a character sitting across from you. Let it speak. Ask it questions. Anger. What are you trying to protect? Fear. What danger do you believe is coming? Sadness. What have you lost that I haven't allowed myself to grieve? Do not censor the answers. Do not try to sound wise or mature. Let the voice be raw, uncomfortable, even embarrassing. You will be surprised by what appears. Anger might tell you it exists, because for weeks, maybe years, you have been saying yes when every cell in your body wanted to say no. Fear might confess that it learned very early in life that being yourself was dangerous, that love was conditional, that safety depended on adaptation and silence. This dialogue is not childish. It is depth psychology in action. It is the work Carl Jung spoke about when he described the necessity of giving the shadow a voice. When the shadow is not allowed to speak in words, it will speak in symptoms, in anxiety, exhaustion, resentment, sabotage. When you let it speak consciously, it no longer needs to scream through your life. Third comes the minimum act of sovereignty. With the insight you have gained, you take one concrete action that protects your energy. Not a dramatic revolution, not a confrontation fueled by adrenaline, a small, deliberate gesture that tells your nervous system a new truth. It might be postponing a response for 24 hours instead of replying immediately. It might be saying, "I can't do that," without offering a long explanation. It might be turning. End off your phone an hour before sleep. It might be canceling a meeting you agreed to out of guilt. It might even be proposing a conversation, but choosing to have it after you've eaten, rested, and walked, not in the heat of emotional activation. This act is what consolidates integration. Your system learns that it no longer needs to shout from the underground because there is an adult present who listens and decides. Over time, the intensity softens. The inner pressure eases. Practice this for 21 days. Watch what happens. Notice how your dreams begin to change, how your environment responds to you differently, how your internal tone shifts. And yes, some relationships will become tense. That is not a failure. It is a recalibration. What has healthy roots will adapt and grow with you. What depended on your emotional servitude will fall away on its own. That is not loss. It is clarity. Think of Anna again. 4 weeks after making this decision, her nights were no longer filled with dreams of crowded markets, where she was pulled apart, demanded from every direction. Now she dreamed of a garden. She watered slowly without rush. The people who became angry at her no were fewer than she feared, and the one who stayed herself was worth 10 of anyone else. Amado noticed something similar. The dream of the room that used to visit him with oppressive frequency began to fade. In its place appeared a bridge illuminated by a steady lamp, and at the end of that bridge, the young figure at once terrified him was no longer chasing or watching from the shadows. It walked beside him. This is not magic. It is recovered psychic energy. It is the shadow relieved because it no longer has to speak through fear and pain. If as you listen to this you feel a stirring in your chest, a quiet vibration, let me tell you something essential. You are not late. You are not broken. You are not too much for anyone who truly has eyes to see you. You are still in time to begin a peace that does not depend on the world's mood. You are still in time to choose yourself. You are still in time to hold your gaze in that faceless mirror and finally realize that the one waiting behind the half-open door has always been you. And if right now you feel fear, that is perfect. Take it by the hand. Fear also belongs. When it is integrated, it stops directing your life from behind the scenes. A few moments ago, I promised you a transformative teaching. Here it is in a single sentence you can repeat as an anchor. The peace you are searching for does not live beyond the defeat of your shadow. It exists on the other side of your willingness to hold it, without fleeing, without judgment. This is individuation. It is the process of becoming who you truly are, rather than who you were shaped to be for others. And it begins now. Begin with the pause. Address your emotion as if it were a being with memory, intention, and wisdom. Take one small, deliberate act of inner sovereignty. Then repeat, over tea. Silence will no longer feel hollow. It will feel inhabited, alive. You will notice that you are lighting your own flame, and that the need for others to guide your way begins to fall away. If something in this reflection stirred within you, allow that movement to become conscious. Subscribe, and let us continue this path together. Share this with someone who is ready to stop reacting and start choosing themselves. And if you're willing, tell me in the comments what you encountered when you entered dialogue with your shadow. If you want to anchor the moment, right now, write, I choose my peace. Until we meet again, remember this. When you dare to face your darkness, you do not become more dangerous. You become more free. And in Jung's understanding, freedom is always the doorway to peace.